going on? They say the Russians just invaded West Germany.
This is nuclear war.
Greetings, Professor Falcon.
Welcome once again to Nuclear Nightmares, the show that leaves you with a warm glow, albeit a radioactive one.
15 long time.
Yes, it has, but never mind. In this brand new episode, we are going to take a look at this promotional film made by the COI in 1971, explaining the role of the UK Warning and Monitoring Organisation. Get comfy as we take a look at Sound an Alarm. The previous decade was one of enormous social and political upheaval. The recent Cuban Missile Crisis and the worsening situation in Vietnam caused many to suspect that the human race would not get out of the 60s alive. These concerns were best encapsulated by the notoriously bleak film The War Game. Sound an Alarm is its total antithesis, a short film clearly designed to reassure the public. This being said, the film has the least encouraging start to any movie this series has covered so far. I'm sorry, I appreciate that the reference point here is a bit tenuous, but it was literally the first thing that came to mind when I saw this bit. We see a particularly dishevelled bunch emerging from their shelters. It looks like they've spent all of last night doing Jaeger bombs and listening to Pantera. Eventually, one of their number remarks,
I think it's been only 7 days.
And so we are launched into flashback mode. We see a doctor with the weakest moustache in celluloid history as he goes off on call, bidding adieu to his saucy nurse wife before he leaves. No, that is car. Close enough. Only one letter out. Thanks for the exposition anyway. The good doctor pays a call on the local branch of the UK Warning and Monitoring Organisation to give the station controller a tetanus shot. We never find out how this guy managed to cut himself. He was probably slipped whilst he was carving a totem of Curtis LeMay. We hear from the radio that things are a bit iffy. The movie is sketchy on the details, but it would seem that war is imminent. The doctor and his patient conclude their business in one of the most British scenes ever recorded.
Well, you can have the stitches out in about 10 days, and you'll need another injection in a month.
Oh, thanks. Sorry to have bothered you.
Sure.
Have a cup of tea before you go?
Now that sounds like a good idea. Where would we be without it?
The doctor takes it upon himself to ask a bloody stupid question. Mind you, it's a good thing he did, or the film would have come to an abrupt end.
None of my business, actually, but well, what the hell is going on here?
Well, our job's a matter of seeing that people are warned. Warned of attack, warned of fallout.
Sure, but honestly, if there is a war, do you really think all this will make any difference?
Oh, certainly. Not as much as we'd like, obviously, but an effective warning would certainly save lives, probably millions.
Devotees of the film Threads will recognise this device straight off.
I've seen one of these before, at the hospital.
Some hospitals have them, factories, ports, places where there are large numbers of people. There are 20,000 warning points with receivers like this all over the country, all manned by ordinary people. They're organised by the police. Now, if there were an attack... Oh, blast.
Was that a pun? Okay, I appreciate his arm still hurts him, but you've now got a guy in a nuclear civil defence film saying, "Oh, blast." That would be a typically British response to an impending calamity.
Oh, blast.
After a brief explanation of how fallout is measured, we see a dear little old ticker tape computer trying to get much needed information to various control stations up and down the country. Don't mock the low tech. If the unthinkable should happen, I don't think smartphones are going to save the day. If disaster strikes, dot matrix printers may become the very last word in human technology. That's a cheery thought to be going on with. But don't worry, there are cheerier ones. As the shifts change at the outlying observer posts, one volunteer describes the raging geopolitical turmoil which even now is moving east and west inexorably towards their doom.
Ah, you know, the usual story. Everybody swearing they're nice, happy, peaceful, peace-loving little chaps. Nobody really wants trouble.
Well, thanks Beret Guy, now we know everything. Tempting as it is to be too hard on this film, in terms of how Cold War scenarios are being played out, we need to remember that unlike Threads or the War Game, Sound an Alarm is not trying to make too many claims about the potential road to war. It's trying to make us feel better about the prospect of a war actually starting. Interesting use of dialogue here. It could have just as easily been read like,
"Ah, you know, the usual story. Everybody swearing they're nice, happy, peaceful, peace-loving little chaps. Nobody really wants trouble."
Or at least it would have been if it had been left to me. As the new shift at the warning post come online, we are told that their job is to tell regional control where the bomb has gone off, and that's it, I suppose. Crucially for the film, the pace trundles on quickly, so that we don't immediately poke holes in our so-called preparedness.
Either by maroon or siren.
Well, let's just hope this little beast keeps on with it. Oh, Lord, I busted.
Well, that's a pain in the arse, isn't it? As you may expect, the well-oiled machine that is the UKWMO springs into action. 99 red balloons, anybody? Interestingly, this film does take a moment to show the stiff upper lip start to wobble a bit.
Warning, red.
That's the thing about 70s Brits in government films. Nothing short of the collapse of civilization or the possibility of being all out for 77 against Australia will ever get us down. We can now look forward to some suspenseful shots of furrowed brows and bits of information being passed along on hurriedly scribbled notes and any radios that still work. Just to be awkward, it would appear that the Soviets have bombed the Met Office, and let's face it, anything within a 2-mile radius depending on the yield of the weapon. Michael Fish used to get on my nerves too, but that seems a bit extreme.
Though at the beginning of the day you will find 1 or 2 showers dotted about here and there.
Huh, you couldn't forecast that, could you, capitalist pig?
As the information gathered from the observer posts filter through, the UKWMO are about to dispense fallout warnings to the affected areas. It's amazing just how pristine a small island like Britain looks after it's just been struck with several million tons of high explosives. As you may expect, the dutiful operatives at HQ are coordinating with other members of the NATO alliance and Britain's own armed forces, in particular the RAF and the Royal Navy, both of which appear to have been spared immediate destruction. It was very sporting of the Soviets not to hit either Southampton or USAF Mildenhall, wasn't it? Unexpectedly, we do see the human side of our characters begin to show.
Oh, what can I do for you? How long have they been on duty?
About 17 hours, why?
They'll crack up, you know that, don't you?
As long as they do the job first.
And so will you if you don't think you...
When I want your advice, I'll ask for it. I'll bear it in mind.
Good God, it's like the radioactive version of 633 Squadron. It couldn't be more British if the bunker was made out of Yorkshire pudding held together with tea bags and sage and onion stuffing. Ah, the UK post-attack countryside. Still green and pleasant in spite of the fact that, according to the film, at least 12 weapons in the tactical yield range were all detonated within about 30 or 40 miles of each other. The UK isn't that sodding big. If any of the cities were struck, enormous fires would have broken out. The sort of fires that would be less likely to go out than a 40-year-old World of Warcraft enthusiast named Cyril. Finally, we get to the point of the film.
Due to prompt action taken by the public on the issue of warnings, many people in this region have survived the worst effects of the attack, and every effort is now being made to bring increasing help to stricken areas. Local authority controllers are operating emergency feeding centers.
Sub-region want to talk about our manning position and communications. There's a fantastic survival problem out there. I think we might be able to lend them a hand.
Is now generally able to provide facilities for the more serious. The Warning and Monitoring Organization have a precise appreciation of the fallout threat in this country. When they are satisfied that there is no further risk from fallout or other attacks, you will be advised by the...
Now remember, our main task is over, but we're still needed. We've got a lot of communications left. We're a large group of able-bodied men and women spread all over the country, and our skills are going to be invaluable. We're badly needed. Whatever's out there, it's not peace.
And so, our characters emerge into the bleached film stock where our tale began. Bravo for us carefully prepared British and our apparent immunity to radiation sickness. If you're a bit disorientated and puking up after the bomb drops, it's probably just exhaustion, and you should only start fanning about like a maiden aunt when you start shitting out your own liver. Tempting as it is to poke holes in this film, perhaps we should be a bit generous towards it and remember the time in which it was made and the purpose for which it was intended. It isn't true, I believe, to say that this film has a political point to make in the same way that all the other films covered in this series so far have. It's not trying to be an anti-war film. Rather, whilst accepting the obvious truth that the outbreak of World War III is not going to be a jolly affair, it is trying to restore some kernel of hope in the people watching after the bleakness of the war game from the previous decade. It's only fair to state that no one really understood or accepted the possibility of a nuclear winter. That theory was only to gain some traction in the 1980s. Even if we give this film that amount of leeway, there is still a legitimate gripe, and that is that nothing unexpected happens. No instruments fail. People may get exhausted, but they don't get hysterical or mutinous. The blast pattern is in line with all of the readings taken, and no mistakes are made at all. Even if we go out on a limb and say that no cities were attacked, and the weapons used were of the minimum yield for atomic fission, the idea that the operation runs as smoothly as we see here is at best fanciful. That said, I must concede that the film is as convincing as I think it could have been given its objective. Sound an Alarm is an appeal for us all to calm down in the face of the possibility of global destruction. Knowing what we know now about the power of nuclear weapons, the movie does sadly fail in this task. Perhaps a more honest but less effusive title would have been Better Than Nothing. That's all for this episode. I'm deeply grateful for your continuing subscriptions and comments, so until next time, cue the soothing music.